nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hey everybody, thank you for coming. We just have a few agenda items, then we'll go into our commissioners meeting. I'd like to welcome Dan Young and Brian Koppel from CPL Consultants. We'll talk a little bit about possibility of a new fire hall. So are there any hearing of visitors for agenda items tonight? No? Okay. Our first item is a municipal cooperation resolution. This is brought to us from Emily. Do you want to talk about it, or?
Sure. So this is just sort of like a money market account, so I can take the tax collection dollars and deposit them into this interest-bearing account. It's 1.52% compounds daily, so if you average that out on an average daily balance of $1 million, it would be $1,250 for the month compared to $0. So it's obviously going to start at zero, and then the bank account may go up to $4 million. But it's interest that we can be making on those funds before they're transferred to the supervisor's office. It's just a way for us to make a few $1,000s extra on that money.
No, I looked at when I saw this, and I like that you're finding every way possible to save in your office from machines right through this. So I think it's a really good use of funds, and thank you for taking these on and checking it out.
And we do this already with Evans Bank. So, but this would be for the tax collection piece, which is awesome. So, okay, I'll go ahead and read it. Whereas New York General Municipal Law, Article 5-G, Section 119-O, Section 119-O empowers municipal corporations defined in Article 5-G, Section 119-N to include school districts, boards of cooperative educational services, counties, cities, towns and villages, and districts to enter into, amend, cancel, and terminate agreements for the performance among themselves, or one for the other, of their respective functions, powers, and duties on a cooperative or contract basis. Whereas the town of Eden wishes to invest portions of its available investment funds in corporations with other corporations, or cooperations, with other corporations and or districts pursuant to the New York Class Municipal Cooperation Agreement, amended and restated as of March 14, 2014. And whereas the town of Eden wishes to assure the safety and liquidity of its funds, now therefore it is hereby resolved as follows. That, I'm believing I'm putting your name in there, correct?
Yes, that'd be me.
Yep, Emily Hawkins is hereby authorized to execute and deliver the cooperative investment agreement in the name of and on behalf of the town of Eden. I don't think actually you can sign for that. So I'm gonna change and amend that to my name. I don't believe that you can sign that, but maybe. No, we'll keep it your name, and if Bill has a different perspective, we'll change it. So we'll keep it with Emily. I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carried. Okay. The next item is really just to declare 3 office desks and chairs from the building department and assessors department as surplus. And I'll just make a motion to approve that.
Second.
Any questions? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Motion carried. And last is just for discussion. Ron keeps asking me on how we want to move forward with the petition that we received in regards to putting in a no parking zone from the corner of George, Main Street to a small section of George Street. The reason being is that lots of people are parking on the grass across the way. Ron believes, and I agree with him in some ways, that when people pull out of the Dairy Queen parking lot and there's cars parked there, it creates a hazardous condition. Not to mention that they could be hitting, you know, the other car, which I think may have actually happened this year once. So what he's proposing is 120 feet on the right side, looking from Main Street up George Street, bordering the property to have a no parking zone. Really, it's
I thought
directly,
that was the homeowners, sorry to interrupt, the homeowners proposing, not Ron.
it's the homeowner who's requesting it, it's
Yeah.
Ron's proposal for a solution.
Okay.
So the whole scenario of that was, the homeowner took it upon themselves to put a barrier up, which is illegal. So right before plowing season, Ron went and spoke with the homeowner about the fact that those had to be removed. And so then the homeowner came and spoke with me, and Ron had given out some suggestions. This is one of his suggestions. And so if we do want to move in that direction, we would, you know, have to do a local law, putting a no parking zone in there, move forward with a public hearing. And I just need to know if we're in favor of moving forward with this, or if there's some discussion on it.
I'm fine going and looking at it. I don't know if I wanna stop people from being able to park on Route 62.
No, it's on George Street.
But I thought in here she's saying at the corner of 62, like
It's from the corner of 62
down.
going west on George Street.
So it's also where a lot of
And Main
dairy
Street.
customers park. I don't really wanna take parking spots away from them
I
either.
would agree.
So what I wanted to point out to you is that they're parking on George Street
Yeah,
behind cars that are parking on.
yeah,
Those cars are pulling out
yeah.
and it's creating some issues. They would still be able to park on George Street, just not directly behind where the parking lot is.
Yeah, but then that's further down.
Right.
I understand the safety issue from the corner, so maybe it's, a car length or two that they can't park. And,
Yeah.
because there's not that many spots on the side of Dairy Queen. I think 120 feet is, that's why, when I talked to Ron, today, because I called, because we saw this, he also said we could put, so it's not wrecking their grass, that he could put some stone down, so it doesn't wreck the grass, and put the stone, because it is the town's right away,
Mhm.
the property there. And, so that's one option, so the lawn doesn't look terrible.
Please use the mic, Sue.
Sorry,
So do you want to look at it and then, I mean,
I'll go and measure myself to see what I think is far, but I'm not for taking away all that parking by any means. But I can go see, from my own point of view anyways, what I feel is comfortable, but I would be comfortable with taking away from that spot.
I feel the same way. I'd like to measure
Okay.
what would be reasonable, but I do totally agree with the homeowner and with you that part of that is a safety issue, turning that corner. And they need room to see as they back out who's coming around the corner.
right. Okay, are you going,
Yep.
Emily? Okay. Are there any hearing visitors for a regular town board meeting? No? All right, I'll make a motion then to leave the town board meeting and go into the fire commissioners meeting.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. All right, so we didn't have our last fire commissioners meeting, so I feel like we haven't met in a while. Mike, this is your first. Hello, congratulations again. At the beginning of last year, we did goal setting and any kind of initiatives that you had for 2020. I believe Marlene reached out to you to ask you if you had any. This would be that time that we can talk about them. Whoever wants to go first.
So some goals for the Eaton Fire Department. We're looking to continue our build spec on our 7-1, and we'd like to be placing the order within the next 2 months.
Say that again, your what stuff?
Our new 7-1,
Oh, yeah.
and placing that order, and we'd like to have that in service by the end of the year.
So what is, in order to get it in service by the end of the year, when would you have to have those specs done?
So it's a 10-week lead time from date of purchase to when the chassis arrives within the Erie County lines, basically, and then it would be a few weeks at the upfitters.
Okay.
summer to help with fire prevention. We'd like to continue to grow our cancer prevention with improvements to our SOPs and stuff like that for more knowledge that we're gaining on it. And we're looking to continue to improve our training standards with building more training props.
Okay, good. Anything else?
That's it.
Awesome, thank you. Does anyone have any questions on that for him?
No.
All right, thank you, I appreciate that. Rick?
Our goals are recruitment and retention. And we're doing, April 25th, we're doing the Recruit New York again this year. And we're also probably gonna do the high school career day for recruitment anyway. And working on our kitchen, training on our new tanker, and probably asking to start specs on our truck 7. And I also didn't give my number of incidents, and
Yes.
for the year, it was 48 incidents for the year.
Can you get that report to Marlene? Do you have that? Oh, you have it.
Yeah, we're missing 2, I don't know why.
Okay,
I got 48 or 46 on my report.
okay. Well, when you correct it, just
Okay.
get it to Marlene, that'd be great. On truck 7, are we in a replacement here?
In 21.
I feel like we just bought you guys a million of these.
It does seem that way, but they were all bunched together.
What's next?
7, what's truck 7? Give me the name of the truck. Does it have a fancy name?
7.
Is it rescue?
Rescue 7, maybe, or
21.
equipment 7, yeah, for 21.
East Eden Service 7.
Okay.
Now it all makes sense.
I was thinking like that Ferrera that I always call a Ferrari or something like that. Okay, so. We have it as replace 2021.
Yeah.
So you just want to prepare for it
Yep.
and then I'll let you know.
Yep.
Okay. I haven't pulled this out in a while. Okay.
And John would like to talk.
Oh, John. Yes, you have goals and initiatives?
I do.
All
I was
right.
thinking as a president representing the membership, we had
Okay.
what I thought was a very productive meeting with our 2 liaisons.
Mhm.
With the board of directors, we discussed several things, and after that, we had some more discussion. And membership would like to see something as far as the retirement program or the retention program. It was discussed more and more. There were some ideas thrown out on the table, but the members who are not property owners would not benefit from the things that we discussed. So our problem is how do we retain and keep our younger members from going to Hamburger or North Boston? How do we keep them in Eden? So I think we need to get some dialogue on this very soon.
How many members live in East Eden, live outside the town?
I'm not sure. How many? That's a cheap question.
Chief.
7.
7, are they active members?
Mhm.
Yes.
Okay.
That live out of town, you said?
Yep.
And it's also members with children, or those children that still live at home. Also those members, the tax benefits don't.
No, I caught that part, thank you.
I have no comment on the retirement piece, but I'm sure you understand the cost to the town on that, correct?
We do, but what is there to keep them there is our issue
Right.
right now. We've been putting on a membership drive, I think, it'll maybe going on 3 months now.
Thanksgiving.
A drive. We had one person come in from town, we did 2 applications for him and his wife, and they never returned.
I just want to tell you, I think your membership drive, everything that I've seen, I think you've done a great job trying to recruit.
Yeah, I don't think that your issue is uncommon in all towns right now. It's something that's brought up probably monthly at some of our meetings. So it's something, I have no problem continuing the conversation at, but to a town on a retirement program is, it's probably not even something we could do. I mean, I just wanna be honest with you, it's out of our reach, so we would have to maybe come up with some other ideas.
But we are looking at ideas and trying to find out, because we didn't years ago go with the program. So we are trying to come up with ideas. We are aware that we need to find something to recruit and keep membership, especially for the longevity piece.
And I will say that it is, well, countywide, statewide, they're working on things just as we're discussing now to try to figure out ways, you know, for especially those towns that don't offer that incentive. But we'll keep the conversation going.
Thank you.
Anything else from me? Oh, yes.
Yes, I just want to be honest with you. I have 2 kids there in the fire department, and I told them both, don't stay in East Eden, go somewhere where you're gonna get a retirement. You're not getting anything out of here.
Right.
You know,
I
and they don't want to.
recognize, I understand, we
No, no,
understand.
but
Yeah.
they said they don't want to, and then when we had our meeting and it was brought up, one of my kids said, well, there's no reason for me to leave then. So, I'm just being honest with you.
I
No,
understand.
we appreciate it, because I know service is in your family, but yet it's hard when you see that other towns do offer that pension, so.
And we have people in East Eden that belong to Hamburg and North Boston,
Right.
that's why they're there.
Mhm.
Does North Boston have the retirement?
The elders.
Anything else on goals and initiatives? No? Okay, well, I appreciate both the departments bringing those to us. I'll turn it over now to, Brian and Dan. Just real fast, kind of where we're at with this is where we've been. There's been some discussion on some needs in our Eden Fire Hall, some of which have to do with compliance issues, some have to do with space issues, and so we're at the point where we need to try to make some decisions on if we want to move forward with the possibility of doing a new fire hall now versus 10 years from now, when the cost could be quite, you know, probably double. Or, you know, do we try to renovate what we have now and come into compliance and spend money now and then possibly later as well? I don't know the answer to that. But Brian has prepared some sketches for us. He has a cost analysis for us, and that's the way we can take it back to the department and start the discussion. Just so everyone knows the process, if the department and the board decides this is something we want to move forward with, it would go out to a mandatory referendum for a vote through the town. It's mandatory for fire halls in our town, so I just want everyone to be aware of that.
Does that go for, what if we were to add on to this building?
No.
Thanks. So this process probably dates back to a year and a half or so when we started looking at ADA compliance, the building next door. The challenges, obviously with ADA compliance are primarily restrooms. Those items can be addressed with some cost, but they left some bigger challenges. The facility itself has some spatial issues. It's kind of at capacity. They're currently using there's turnout gear sort of in a truck bay, if you will. The number of truck bays don't allow for any kind of vehicle growth or fleet growth in the future. And you know, there's some other issues in terms of how the state wants decon handled, how laundry and air should be handled, and how those should be set up. building itself is antiquated. And while we are looking at ways to retrofit it, we also wanted to look at a way to talk about a replacement, if that's the direction the town desired to go. Certainly, the question about the backfill of that building is something that also weighs into the mix. The town has some desire for building a community center. I don't think that it's been thought of as very prudent to build a new community center building with a fire hall that's sort of outdated, or a fire hall that's struggling for some space. So in that direction, the town asked us to scope fire hall. We've been going back and forth a little bit with the department, and there's been a little bit of a hiatus there for the past couple of months, but we wanted to kind of basically show you what the latest iteration of that would look like. And so what you see in front of you is basically an 8-bay, dual bays, fire station with 8 doors. The thought would be the units would be double stacked with an entry and exit. A lot of that's going to be site dependent, and we don't have a site established yet. And so we have to kind of start talking about how that would work, depending on the site configuration. You can see, basically have a decon room, in keeping with state standards, entering into the base, but entering directly from the outside. Separate laundry facility for non-decon, turnout stalls with enough space. This is 50 stalls, is our understanding, and that puts us in a little bit of growth capacity. 54 air tank stalls with an air tank shop, and then equipment repair shop. On the sort of, I call it social side, we have a sort of entry vestibule or showcase front, which it's important, I think, ultimately for districts to be able to display one of their older models, be able to sort of use that as an asset to keep people interested in the fire service. Multi-use room, which could be rented for events or used for fire assembly. Kitchen off of that space, separately accessed mechanical, electrical closet or room off the kitchen. Storage and coat rooms, men's and women's accessible restrooms, a couple of offices and a conference space for smaller meetings or smaller training sessions, workout area, and a future beverage station, should the company desire to fill it out into their multi-use room. And then ultimately a patio space directly outside, which allows that multi-use room to accommodate some bigger events, and especially in the better seasons. Taking advantage of the size of the truck bays, so we sort of see this as 2 separate construction units. The first is kind of a traditional construction, steel and block construction for the multi-use room, the conference area, and then probably prefabricated steel for the truck bays, which gives us some height. And in utilizing the height above the turnout here and shop areas, we have we'd be able to use a loft now that could serve a couple of purposes. First, there's a number of companies throughout Western New York who are using loft for training, and that that's one opportunity. Certainly, there's no shortage of need for storage in the fire hall, so that serves some other opportunities there. Overall, we would see the sort of area of the sort of main building serviced with forced air, and then probably radiant systems inside the fire stalls with a smaller ancillary system to deal with the decon laundry turnout. We're not trying to keep it as warm as frequently as some of the other spaces, so be a bit tempered. When we look at overall cost for a facility like this, it's similar, it's a little bit bigger in scope from one that we've recently completed in the city of Batavia. That project is about $3.1 million. This project with the additional fire bays and a little bit different arrangement for turnout gear and laundry, it's probably right now in the neighborhood of about 3.4 to 3.45 million, and that does not, that's with some generic site numbers thrown at it without knowing sewer, power, and water access. We don't really know, we can't fully calculate the amount of on-site site construction and utility work that'll be needed. So moving forward, in order to kind of round that out, we're gonna really need to start looking at site, if this is a direction that the town and the fire department would like to proceed. With this project, we're probably looking at a, I think the referendum's posted, so it's a minimum of 1 month posting, right? But the town would have to decide whether it wants to hold special election for the referendum or whether it wants to put it on the November ballot. That would greatly determine sort of the construction year. If this were ultimately something that was gonna be November ballot, winter design and construction documentation, then it would be probably spring of 2021 groundbreaking, and ultimately construction through 2021. We estimate probably about 12 months construction site prep. Again, site dependent. So, it's an iteration. It's a lot more formal doing this here than sitting inside the fire hall having a conversation about drawing. I acknowledge that, but we wanted the town board to be able to see some of the progress and thought. And from an architect's perspective, I think that the supervisor hit the nail on the head. You could say, well, construction costs are expensive, and it's not something we necessarily want to undertake at the moment. But construction costs, continue to rise every year in this area, especially. So, it's a scenario in which you have to decide how long you want to provide cures for of the existing building, and ultimately what direction the town would like to go on its campus. So with that, I'm sure there's probably a lot of questions.
Yeah. So, I don't have any, but I don't know if the board does, but you're more than welcome to ask questions of our consultants if you feel you have some.
What size of acreage will we need to build this on?
So a lot of it's based on turning capacities and how the company's going to operate. The company currently does not operate with a ladder and or with an aerial platform. That is fine under the sort of current growth conditions of the town and the current zoning of the town. However, However, I think as everybody in this room knows, the state changes requirements on companies annually. There could be a day where a ladder may be required. We're not anticipating that anytime soon. But at the same time, depending on the type of facilities you have, right? If you stay in your current zoning, but you add a manufacturer comes into town that deals with a large footprint, a large floor plate, and fairly combustible manufacturing goods, you could start to make the case that the company may say, hey, a ladder is really required in order to deal with this product. That's just the nature of the business of firefighting, man. And that's not something that I'm gonna pretend to be an expert on at the moment. They're kind of looking and saying, hey, so the point I'm getting to is, you know, when you start to add that type of unit, it starts to change some of the proximity. And they say, look, we're gonna do it, but we're gonna back it into the space and just be done with it. There's a lot of areas that you can build one of these on a fairly compressed site. You know, if you told me, hey, we've got 1.5 acres, 2 acres to build, okay, great. You know, if we're smaller than that, okay. You know, there's certainly nowhere near that in their current facility. This product could be compressed. It could be all front loaded. It could be, you know, it does not have to be rear loading for the trucks. I think it's desirable to have rear and front loading. You know, it's hard to say exactly because I don't know what's available to the town. I would say that if I were going to be asked about site selection and our engineering group was going to be asked about site selection, we would tell you that before you worry about acreage availability, we would want frontage on main roads for easy access, sewer tie-ins if possible, availability of water, and easy availability of power. Those would be more key than the sort of, you know, overall fit it on postage stamp if we really needed to, but site prep and utility access is probably more critical. I don't know if that's fair to say, Chief. No, we need some room. I got it.
I mean, I can't speak for the department or the committee, but it's been talked about that we'd like an area big enough to have an expanded training facility on site, so we don't have to drive to the ridge and spend another 45 minutes or so driving there and back. But
So,
limited land in town might dictate otherwise. Again,
That would all be, dependent upon what site we find.
I mean, you could also do some of those slightly remote, you know, you could have an adjacent site or somewhere that's close by, so there's some room to work.
Is there shower facilities in that drawing?
No, currently we don't have that depicted. We have a space across from the 2 restrooms, which we would assume was gonna become either an access from the bays into that space, or we would have to add a couple of showers. Depending on how all that works out, we're gonna have to have emergency showers in the decon room and in the truck bays. So there's emergency showers, but you know, that's another question in terms of what you guys actually need. You know, we'll be required to have something.
Thank you.
Over the banquet room or whatever you wanna call it, what kind of ceiling or roof will be on that? Like
You
on
know,
the other side, they're putting, like, obviously something to support us, but what's gonna be on this side?
so, I mean, really, with the multi-use room, if we're gonna keep this into some kind of cost constraints, we're probably doing a drop or suspended ceiling off of a steel structural system with
this is single-story construction. If there's a need for additional space, or I would rather consider an expansion of the footprint before we started going vertically, for cost control.
And do you have a front facade picture?
So we didn't, again, this is one of those scenarios where you get into trouble with facades. What we have with us is a facade from a similar project. This is a 2-bay, and I can circulate this and drop one up front. This is a recently completed 2-bay hall, but it shows you the idea of 2 separate constructions coming together. I'm just gonna circulate one across. So, what you're looking at there is basically, 2 separate elevations of roof coming together. One prefab metal, one more traditional construction. And the reason why I say we would use traditional construction is, inevitably with the meeting room, we're gonna get into some assembly ratings. So we're gonna need to separate the 2 functions, the truck bay from that assembly space. I'd rather have it be, sort of, just 2-hour non-combustible and make sure we're a full separation there.
So you're gonna go to a steel structure roof then, not a flat tar and stone type?
No, again, this is one of these conversations that we need to nurture further. I would personally recommend sloping the roof, for maintenance cost. Just do steel. Yeah, we're gonna spend some money up front, but, the nature of it is going to last longer, and be a heck of a lot easier to maintain over its life cycle. It doesn't necessarily provide the best landing space for air handling units, but if we stay at a somewhat low slope, then we can still mount air handling units on curbing above it if we needed to. If we have room to drop them on pads behind, that may be a little bit more advantageous. Here we're gonna have exhaust, right? We're gonna have exhaust systems. We have to, in fact, one of the problems with the existing space is, the diesel exhaust capacities. We're gonna have water tanks up in the structural system, for filling tanks or we may have enough water pressure that we don't need to use a reserve tank. That's something that we have to work out depending on where we are.
So with 4 bays, you're gonna have enough height to get enough slope on that roof?
Yeah, and essentially, it's gonna get taller, right? That section is gonna grow taller. But, we would try to balance it out with, kind of a marquee front on it, so that, we've done it where we could use a chimney, you could use, some kind of, it's basically a stone facing or a veneer of some sort, to sort of hide the sort of moment where the 2 roofs come together. But yeah, it's gonna grow in height. The nice thing about using Butler system or Varco Prudence system or something for that is that it's all off-site assembly basically. They're bringing it in sections, craning it into place, doing on-site fittings and then walking away from it. So we can get some height. Uses tapered steel usually as the structural system.
I'd just like to say, the hall we got now is 47 years old. And it's been very low maintenance. I think just had 1 roof, maybe 2 new boilers and paint jobs, and that's about it.
Yep.
And there was foresight into it the last 50 years, you might say.
Sure.
Here we are. I mean, we are bulging at the seams a little bit, but we did get 50 years out of the 1 building for that. We had different halls that was designed before that. They got voted down by the public, and we 2 years later, we built this one, which wasn't as big as the other hall was, and cost almost as much, double. That's all, that's.
This one costs double what the other hall would
Yeah,
cost.
that got voted down like 3 or 4 years before.
And it costs double because of its site?
Well, just
Tiny.
inflation.
Oh,
This
inflation.
was built in '73. And,
Look,
which
Yeah,
is, today it'd be out of a bargain if you could get it, you know, I mean, it's,
you know, we've retrofitted halls, we've added on bays, we've done just about everything under the sun. You know, we've cobbled bays onto, to existing facilities. Springville, if you can remember their old hall, right, was all underneath that, the sort of court building, the new base, you know, adjacency. That was a tricky facility because it had SHPO standards and overrides we had to deal with historically. But, you know, look, at the end of the day, a new build it's easier to sort of manage the build out than it is to deal with a retrofit. But, you know, our job's not here to, like, you know, sell design, right? We can retrofit your existing building, bring it up to current ADA and state standards. It's going to hack into some of the spaces there in order to do that. Or, you know, provide an opportunity for something different. That's kind of what we have in front of us this is an option. You know, we have to tweak and, yeah, we're ways from having this thing be a finished plan, but again, we're generic here, right? We're assuming a big rectilinear site, and I don't exactly know what that's gonna look like yet. I think that what we heard from the department was, you know, basically semi-classical look, not necessarily something that's extremely flashy, but certainly is something that, you know, at the end of the day is something to be proud to say this is the new hall. Tried to balance the current needs. Inevitably, there's probably 2 or 3 things that here or there that we would need to add to the mix. The truck bays are always, you know, you could make a case for widening out one of the bays a little bit more to add more storage inside the bay area. You know, we have to talk about, you know, if you're running a compressor inside the space, what side of the compressor is gonna be, is the compressor want to be on the ground, does it want to be up on a platform? And there's a lot of intricacies here. You can't really go too much further with the design though until we know that we're at least looking into sites. That would be sort of the next logical step for us.
Chief, had you had a chance to look at the drawing?
We looked at it briefly last night, and one of our concerns amongst a few firemen, again, not the committee or the hall, but just those opinions was, it looks like our storage space is similar to the size we currently have in the hall next door. And that is currently our biggest need, is storage. And it was just a concern of our members.
Okay.
So that, you know, that's something, like I said, that's something that we could certainly work on, right? And the question would be, where do you want to add, how much volume do you want to add? But, okay.
And I would just like to add that they're working on me saying $3.5 million. So when we start to put all our wants and needs in, which I think space would be one we would need, that price could fluctuate. That's right, Brian, am I correct in saying that this is what you are getting with me telling you $3.5 million?
It doesn't get a lot cheaper from this point
Right.
on. My feeling is that, you know, look, if you said, hey, we're gonna try our best to keep some of this at single-story construction, And then where we're doing 2-story or we're into 2.5-story construction, we're really gonna let that fly with a prefabricated metal building. We can trim it out, we can make it look like it's traditional construction, but if we're doing that, then, you know, we can work with, if you're, so be your right, that very first truck bay in, you know, there's room out above, you know, we can work there with some, we can work on adding some additional storage, if you're willing to go up a story with it, with mezzanine. If we need ground storage, we're probably into square foot expansion, okay, you know, that's something we're willing to look at. You could say, let's eliminate 2 bays of apparatus, parking, use that for storage with the idea that the headers and stuff are put in place, or even the overhead doors are there, so that you could later on say, nope, you gotta add more apparatus, so we're gonna have to add on parking, or we're gonna have to add on storage and park vehicles in it. You know, you have a future growth plan somewhere. All those things are 6 to 1, half dozen the other at the moment. You know, I would say that's for that. So Dan and I we need a full meeting with full body to kind of work out some of those, flesh out some more of those details before but I caution, I don't want to draw too much more generically and then get it to a site and then figure out that our widths don't fit or something and then we're back to the drawing board, so.
Also, you made mention that banquet room or gathering room could possibly be rented out. Is that something that the town is looking to do moving forward? Because that might change
We haven't talked
the
about
way we
it, no,
approach
it's not really something we talked about.
more storage of our tables and chairs and
Right.
stuff out of the way, so.
You know, I think it's probably something that we would anticipate you'd be able to host community functions or something like that nature in. If you don't see the need for tables to get taken apart, we're okay. Otherwise, yeah, there's table storage takes up a lot of space. Banquets are a big deal. That, you know, that's a whole other sort of option or consideration here.
What is commercial square footage per now?
So it's interesting question. You can still build a steel building, you know, they'll tell you $150 a square for the structural system, the shell package. With fire, because you're adding appurtenances to it, right? Air lines, water lines, you're looking, you know, by the time you're done with it, you're closer to 200 square for the shop space, the overhead in this prevailing wage. If you look at the rest of the building, you're between 250 and 300 a square, depending on your finish. And, you know, again, the nature of the space is such that you're gonna have a minimum finish of 250, but, you know, really trimmed out multi-purpose room is gonna start throwing you up closer to 3. If this were a town office building, I'd tell you 325, but you're not into that kind of conditioning here. It's a big, open, mixed-use space, multi-use space, without having to deal with all the internal security mechanisms of the town hall. So,
Do you happen to have a large drawing that we can look over with our committee?
we'll send a couple of prints down if you feel like this is well enough to start to look at, that's fine. We'll have those come down in the next couple days.
If you can get them tomorrow, I'll bring them back.
I was gonna say, so if we print in the morning, I can pass them off tomorrow, yeah, okay, tomorrow evening, so we can have them down here.
Or, you know what, Brian, you're gonna be here Wednesday too, for signing.
I'll be here next week, yes.
Anything else?
I'm sorry, we're doing with the committee.
Well, of course, this is, okay. Anybody from the board have anything? No? All right, thank you so much. All right, do either chiefs have anything that they would like to bring up to us tonight?